We can get started. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Owen Chen. I'm a volunteer for CSCH, and I've been volunteer for CSCH for almost 20 years. Been in various positions. Currently, I'm a director for the CSCH. So we are very glad that we can organize this event with local other organizations, Carey Chinese School, Raleigh Academy of Chinese Language, and Chapel Hill School, Chinese School at Chapel Hill. And we'd like to thank all our co-organizers to make this event possible. We also would like to thank all the panelists who are willing to share their experiences in tonight's event. So for just a little bit of housekeeping, so we are going to use this Slido website to do the interaction. So we first, I'm going to introduce our event host first, and then she will introduce our panelists. Then panelists will share their experiences first. Then we do the Q&A. We probably will spend majority of time on Q&As. And so ask everyone if you could open slido.com and type an event. So just you can either type slido.com or slide.do. We'll come here and then type an event number 254. Right, and 9475. So that will directly take you to the page with a list of the questions for tonight's event. So you can submit a new question. You can also look at what are the questions that others have submitted, and then you can click this vote, whether you like those questions. And based on the number of votes by the audience, those questions will be listed at the top. And later on, when we are in the question and answering section, then those top questions will be answered first. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce our host tonight. We are so glad Alan Zing can host the event tonight. Alan is a rising sophomore at Duke University. She's studying computer science and public policy, and she also has an interest in visual arts. She graduated locally here from Anlo High School last year. So she's definitely has a fresh memory about the college application process. So Ellen, take it over.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Owen. And yes, I'm so excited. There's a slight, there we go. I'm so excited and honored to be with you all tonight. We have an amazing panel of 7 rising college freshmen who have just gone through the college application process and are really ready and excited to share their experiences and insights from it all. So panelists, I'd love to introduce you guys. If we could just go in the order of the poster here, starting from Abigail, and just introduce yourselves, share anything relevant, and yeah, go ahead.
Hi everyone, I'm Abigail. I just graduated from NCSSM and I'll be attending MIT in the fall. I'm currently undecided, but I'm looking at computer science or engineering.
Hi, I'm Alina. I attended NCSSM and before that Green Hope, and I'll also be attending MIT this fall. I think I will major in math or something related to math.
Hello, everyone. My name is Angela. I also graduated from NCSSM and I attended Enloe High School before that. I'll be attending Harvard University in the fall. I think I'll be majoring in something related to environmental science, also something similar to public policy or computer science.
My name is Anton, and I just recently graduated from Green Level High School, and I will be attending UNC Chapel Hill, and I am planning on majoring in something in the pre-health career path.
Hi everyone, my name is Brian. I recently graduated from Durham Academy and I will attend Princeton University in the fall with I just transferred to the engineering school, so I'm looking to some field in that. Very excited to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Raymond. I just graduated from Chapel Hill High School, and I'm going to Georgia Tech with a biomedical engineering major and also an interest in computer science. So maybe I'll minor in that as well.
And hi, I'm Yi Chen. I also graduated from Chapel Hill, and I'll be attending MIT next year. I think my biggest interest right now is economics, and that's why I'm planning on taking course 614 at MIT, which is computer science, economics, and data science, because I think that'll prepare me well for grad school.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for those introductions. And yes, as Owen said, I'll be starting off with some introductory questions to kind of ease us in, talk about some broad topics. And in the meantime, the audience, you guys can put your questions into Slido and I'll take a look at that and we'll transition over. The light just went out, but that's okay. So the first question I'd love to ask is kind of an attempt to quell the nerves that might be present in this online room. So my first question is, what advice do you have for someone who may be stressing or even hopeless about this college application process and getting into college itself? And let's aim for around 3 of our panelists to answer this question.
I can go first. So my biggest piece of advice would be just to talk with other people that are in the same position as you. So maybe your friends or other people, because you guys all have the same questions, stressing about the same thing. So it's a good like idea to, consult with your peers about these kind of issues.
Adding on to what Anton said, I think something that helped me was making a plan. I just am someone who likes to visualize everything. And so I just looked at the months ahead and the work I had to do. But also I do want to say that I compiled all of the college essays that I had to write, and it came up to more than 40 essays, which worried me a lot. And I think that's a lot of where the hopelessness comes into play. But I think it's just good to remember that in the end, you'll be able to copy paste a lot. So I feel like I only wrote 7 essays.
I think what was said before is already great advice. One other piece that I'd like to offer is to choose your safety schools well. Your safety school should be a school where you have a decent chance of getting into, but you also think is a really good option for you. For me, this was UNC Chapel Hill. And I think it really helped me avoid all the stress by having, a great option. If I didn't make the dream schools, if I didn't make those, I'd have a great option to go to.
These are great pieces of advice and also really good transitions for my next question. So as Alina mentioned, compiling essay prompts that your colleges will answer, and as Yishan just mentioned, creating a school list is really important. And these are all things that are kind of associated with the preliminary stages of the college application process. So my second question here is, how would you recommend someone start the college application process, especially in a way that sets them up for success?
I can start off this question. So for me, it's a little bit daunting to start off the college application process, especially since you're looking at 5 awards, 10 activities. And a lot of times for that part of the process, you don't know what to put there. So for me, the easiest way for that section was I listed out all of the activities that I did and all of the awards that I did. And for every single activity, I also listed out information about what I did, everything that I did for each of those activities. And that gave me a really clear view of which activities were really important and which ones weren't as important. And also it gave me a really good idea in the future for supplemental essays, which of these activities or which specific events under my activities I could write supplemental essays about. So it's made everything really clear. So I think to start out, that's a really good idea if you have no idea what to write for your activities and awards.
Yeah, and I would say kind of along the same line, make sure you start early enough that you have time to give yourself brainstorming time. So enough time to just list out possible ideas for essays or supplementals, preferably probably in the summer before your senior year. Just giving yourself enough time to space out essays and anything that you need to do for the application is really good.
I think in addition to what Angela and Abigail have said, on that flip side, if you have a chance, start visiting some schools that you feel you might be interested in, and don't just attend their info session, but really try to talk to students there, attend a class if you have the opportunity. because each school is unique and you're going to want to find a school that best suits your interests. And that'll also help you when you're writing their essays. So you can tailor your essays to that specific school, which will help you and set you up for success.
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thing. So for me personally, what helped me like tremendously was I made like a Google Drive and I had many folders, you know, for different like things. Like I had one for supplemental essays, one for, you know, all the college requirements, everything. And I think just visually like spacing everything out, it just makes the whole process so much less confusing. So you don't have to like remember everything in your head.
Yeah, awesome. As you guys can tell, the college application process in the beginning is a lot of documenting and really figuring out what you want. So the next question I have for everyone is, what was the hardest part of your college application journey and how did you overcome that, or what did you learn from that?
So my hardest part of my college application essay was definitely choosing my essay topics. And I think the best way that I like helped with that problem was talking to my parents and, you know, my grandparents. I would constantly send over like my ideas to them to see what their opinions were. And, you know, the people closest to you are usually brutally honest with you. So that's like really helpful and you'll get a lot of feedback from them.
Yeah, I agree with what Anton said. That is really, really hard. But the hardest part for me, especially during winter break, was like all of the colleges, like all the college options I had, like that I wanted to apply to, that I eventually just could not apply to all of them. So yeah, the hardest part for me was deciding like what colleges do I really, really want to go, because most of the colleges are really good colleges and there's not really a bad choice in choosing any one of them.
If no one else has anything to add right now, I'll say really quick, what was hardest for me was the same as Anton. It was kind of thinking of what to write a lot of my essays on, especially the supplemental ones. One way that I got over that was I chose like 3 to 5 really important things about myself. So these were either like life experiences, extracurricular experiences, or just like extracurriculars in general. And I pinpointed those as the most important ones I wanted to write my essays on. And I had around like a paragraph written for each that I could reuse. And typically when you have kind of broad ideas like that, you have what's most important that you can fit into your essays, but you have can try to manipulate them, or I guess like change them up a little bit to fit the supplemental prompts for each essay. So you can make sure for every college you're getting in what you think is most important about yourself, but you're also able to answer all of those prompts. And also just to like emphasize what Anton said, talking to your parents is definitely, like the people closest to you is definitely really, really important throughout the entire college application process, even like knowing where to start and your activities. So I talked a lot with my parents and with my brother, and I think that helped clear up a lot of my questions and a lot of the stress that I had about the entire process in general.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Now, my last question before I move on to taking some of these audience questions, yeah, keep those coming in. I want to zoom out a little bit. I know that we don't just have rising seniors in this room. We also have some high school students, maybe some incoming high school students as well. So my question is, if you could do high school all over again, those 4 years, what would you do differently, if anything?
Well, I'll start off.
You got it.
You know,
Okay, thank you. For me, especially during my freshman year, is joining more clubs. Like I was originally a swimmer and like had not a lot of time in general, and I just like thought, oh, I probably should not join all these clubs because I don't have the time for them. But I really, really should have just explored a bit, found like 1 or 2 clubs I really wanted to be involved in, and then just build up my like involvement and do what I really want to do in those clubs, and just, yeah, get involved in those high school activities because they're really fun, in addition to being great builders for your college resume.
yeah, going off what Raymond said, also like I know it's not important to know what you're doing. Like it's totally okay if you go into college, you know, still exploring your options. But if you have a good idea of what you want to pursue in the future, you can start circulating your like extracurriculars and activities around what your passion is. And if you're applying to a college that has what you're wanting to do, it could look great and help you a lot during the application process.
Yeah, my answer is actually kind of similar to both the previous ones, but I guess another thing to add is that if you do end up exploring like a lot of different areas, don't be afraid to like drop or like maybe not pursue as further in certain areas that you find that you don't like. Don't feel like that once you've chosen a club, you're automatically committed to it for like all 4 years of high school, because high school is meant for exploring. You have that time, so you can look for things you like, but also don't be afraid to like drop things if you're not as like passionate about it, perhaps.
Anyone else have any thoughts before we move on? Okay, awesome. So looking at the Slido here, we've talked a lot so far about extracurriculars and this process of exploring. So I want to take this question. What are the extracurricular activities that you've done? Is there any particular activity that helped you to stand out? Again, panelists, you can share as much or as little as you'd like, personal detail wise, but I think the real question here is, how did you find these extracurriculars and really make them like find joy and also like some personal involvement with them?
I can start. For me, I did a lot of things in the math and physics area. So I took a lot of like math and physics focus classes, and a big reason why I could do that was because I went to NCSSM, and also through NCSSM, I was part of like a physics research program. So that was another super cool opportunity. Besides that, on my own, I did math and physics competitions, which I think there are some pretty like comprehensive resources for online, and I also went to a math summer program. So I think I found something that I really liked, and it was just like really nice that I had true passion for it, and it never really felt like something I was forcing myself to do. It was just like enjoyable, and I think it helped me like, I guess, stand out in the college app process.
So this is a bit of a more different one for me, but I'm an Eagle Scout and I've been doing Scouts since the 6th grade. I felt like my Eagle Scout project especially was a great way to express one of those passions that I had, sustainability. And it was also a great vehicle for personal growth, the whole Scout program in general. So basically your activities don't all have to be strictly academic, because a lot of what colleges want to see is in the personal growth aspect, and they'll ask you about that in their essays.
Yeah, my main activities were, I did a lot of sports. So I was a tri-sport athlete, student government, and I also did research at Duke. So I'd say in terms of like DA, they focused a lot on not just like STEM focused extracurriculars. So I definitely like branched out a little bit, and on that like personal growth piece, I definitely had a lot to write about. And I think ultimately it doesn't really matter what extracurricular you choose to do, as long as you do something that you like and that you can talk about, and talk about A, how it influenced you, and also B, how you gave back to that community and that program.
Yeah, going off what Brian said, my extracurricular definitely helped me in my essays and all that. So I really focused on music throughout like all my like childhood. I started in band in 5th grade, and I played the saxophone. Throughout high school, I joined a lot of other clubs that also involved music, like an honor society that I did was also involved with music, and I did other like jazz bands and things like that. And that also helped me, put a lot of my awards and recognitions on my Common App, and it sparked a lot of ideas for my essays as well. So yeah.
As for me, I would say my main extracurriculars that I did all kind of had a general theme of public speaking or kind of like telling stories, kind of. So my main extracurriculars were speech and debate. So I competed a lot in specifically speech events. And the easiest way to get involved in speech and debate is kind of self-research. So a lot of the schools that I was at, Enloe and NCSSM, they both didn't have really big speech and debate clubs, or they were all kind of student run. So a lot of that is being able to search tournaments by yourself online, which is similar to what you would do for a lot of extracurriculars, but there's a lot of resources online if you search that up yourself. And I also did a lot of writing. So I did writing competitions and I wrote a lot of short stories in general. And another big extracurricular I did was research. So I've been doing environmental science research for quite a while now. And I think something that looks pretty good on your college application is being able to do something for a consistent amount of time, like over a long period of time. And the easiest way to have something consistent for a long period of time is to do something you're really interested in. So all of the extracurriculars that I did at least over basically 3 to 4 years of my high school career, because I was really interested in public speaking and writing. And I really enjoyed the environmental science research I did, and especially being able to present this research at conferences and competitions. So I think that was the overall theme of my extracurriculars. And I also had a few other smaller things like I did chess. So I hosted a few chess tournaments, and I also participated in a environmental science competition called Envirothon.
Thank you for sharing. So yeah, as you guys can see, extracurriculars are a pretty important topic. And it's a lot about exploring and finding and chasing these common themes and interests and finding something that genuinely excites you. So I think Brian mentioned he was a tri-sport athlete. And I know just from previous conversation, Yi-Chen also, if I'm not mistaken, is a D3 athlete. So I'd love to take this next question. Did you do any sports, and do colleges care about sports? And really just talking more about, I guess, the recruiting process if you guys want to.
Yeah, sure. I can start with this one because, as Ellen said, I am running for MIT next year. And I've been running since the 7th grade on a school team. One thing is, should you do sports? I think that's like a big question that I've kind of seen on this Slido. I think it's important to be healthy because that really helps in everything else in your life. So whether that's sports or something else, but sports is a great way to do that. And it's also a great way to manage your time and have, a big block of time that you have to work around. And I find that a lot of people say that sports, provides that for them. And it did for me too. As for, do colleges care about sports? I wrote my Common App essay about my journey as a runner, about going from, being almost cut from the team, not really cut, but like almost in middle school, all the way to being all-state in at the end of this past year in cross country. And a lot of people will say, don't write your essays about sports. I think the way I got around that, the problems that people usually hit when writing college essays about sports and doing sports and stuff, I think the way I got around that was to first write my essay about personal development. And a lot of the essays that I wrote about that weren't about my academic interests were reflections of my personal development. So it wasn't just the essay, my Common App essay, but there were other essays that, for example, MITS as well, that I use stories to kind of, as a vehicle to express personal development. As for recruiting, I saw a question about how hard is it to get recruited to top schools. Most of those top schools are D1 schools. You have to be really good to be recruited. Stanford, you have to be like, you have to be top of the nation kind of talent to be recruited in Stanford, to running at least. And I know they've got really top tier programs too. MIT is D3, so it's less focused on sports. And actually, at MIT, the coach and the admissions, or the coach does not have too much sway in admissions. The admissions decision is not, it doesn't have much to do with the coach. And so, yeah, it really depends, how easy is it to get recruited. At D3 schools, the bar is probably going to be a lot lower. But it's also probably going to be a lot harder to get into those schools in the first place. And so unless you're a really top talent, the answer really varies by school, I guess.
Yeah, so I can go next. My freshman and sophomore year, I played basketball for my school team. And obviously playing a sport can, boost your chances of getting into a university, but it honestly depends on the extent to which you play. Like for me, it was just like, 2 years. It wasn't anything that major. So it probably didn't help as much for me, but colleges like to see you balance like another life with academics, and seeing that you can handle that is like a real eye popper for them.
For me, I also did a sport. I played tennis throughout high school. And I wasn't really thinking about college. I think it's nice to do things beyond the college application process. Like if sports are something that makes you happy, releasing those endorphins, like I feel like that's a pretty good reason to do them too. I will say for MIT, they have two sections for their awards. There's like a scholastic section and a non-scholastic section, and my non-scholastic section was like completely filled with just tennis awards. So I'm not sure if it actually made any impact, but it did make its way onto my application.
I also played a sport. I played volleyball, and I played volleyball my freshman and junior year. I couldn't play sophomore year because of COVID, but I also played club volleyball, so outside of school throughout all of middle school. But most of that didn't really make it on the application. But I did write in my application about playing on volleyball team and also playing like the summer before ninth grade on a national AAU team. So a lot of the other advice is pretty similar to everybody else's, but I would say beyond just college, I think participating in sports gave me like a new group of people that I could become friends with that were outside of, I guess, like super academic, from science Olympiad or like math club or something like that. And it was a really, really nice group of people to talk to. And I think a lot of that helps make your high school experience a lot better. So beyond just being good for college, I think if you can incorporate sports into a high school experience, I think it genuinely really betters your experience.
All right. Wow, we have a lot of athletes in this room. So some people might be wondering right about now how exactly the panelists balanced all of this on top of, being great students, having these other extracurriculars. So I'd love to take this next question here. How do you manage your time with academics, sports, clubs, extracurriculars, etc., and not being overwhelmed and sleeping late? So especially pertinent to the college application process, I'd think.
I guess I can go. I would say try to prioritize. So make sure you know like what is your biggest priority at the moment. So if it's like closer to like a college application deadline, for example, you need last edits, then obviously at that time your priority is probably getting those edits in and getting the application in. But yeah, I think like making yourself organized and giving yourself like lists of like priorities is a really good way to make sure you're actually getting what you need to be done, and also make sure to remember to prioritize like keeping yourself healthy and happy. But yeah.
I think something I'd say is to be like pretty assertive about saying no to things and being like really intentional about the tasks that you take on, because like senior fall, a lot of the things that you've agreed to or the leadership positions that you've stepped up to have will all be like more intense than they were in the past. And then you also have like college apps on top of that. And so I just think it's like there's a lot of pressure to do more and like have all these things on your resume, but like I know for the MIT application, again, there's only 4 spots for activities you did during the school year. So I think it's not really necessary to like be like, oh, there's like 10 spots on the Common App. So like, I don't know, Harvard definitely cares about the 10th thing I listed here. Because I feel like as long as you have a few things that you've shown that you're like consistently really dedicated to, you don't need to have like a ton of things.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Another thing I did to essentially minimize the workload and like stress on myself when combining the the college applications and my homework is kind of doing homework in class and like during lunch, like finding time during school to like do homework to just give you a jump start on what you have to do that night really helps a lot, especially for me who sometimes has to like sleep at like 9 and wake up at like 4:30 the next day for morning swim practice. It really helps to just try to find time like during school or like squeezing out time to do your homework.
On that topic, I'd love to ask the panelists a question about time management regarding college applications. Obviously, there are a lot of essays to write, lots of deadlines to meet. So what lessons did you guys take away about time management, about things like procrastination from your journey with college applications?
I can start. I would definitely say have a plan, start early. I think a Google Calendar is a great way to do it, but break it down into small chunks and then set deadlines for yourself and put them in your calendar. Like they can be fake deadlines, but it'll give you a sense of urgency. I definitely did not have that sense of urgency, so I wrote my essays like a week or two before they were due and submitted them. And like looking back on those first drafts of essays, they were absolutely horrible. So I would say even if you like if you're a rising junior, you should start writing now. Like rising senior, sorry. You should start writing now, not juniors. Don't worry about that. Go have fun. But plan ahead, especially for your Common App, which you're going to want to write a lot of drafts for. And I would say, depending on the amount of schools you apply to, space your time out. I think like it's about 10 hours per like complete application per college is like what the rule of thumb, but it depends on how well you write essays and that kind of thing. So plan ahead, otherwise you're going to spend your entire winter break like writing essays, and that's not fun.
I think one thing that I found is you definitely need to give yourself time to go through a lot of drafts. I think one thing that kind of made it hard for me to like start on essays was that I always wanted like a perfect idea or a perfect essay the first time around, but you definitely want to give your time yourself time for a ton of drafts. So even if your like first draft is awful, just force yourself to sit down and get out a draft no matter how bad it is. And then like the next day when you like wake up and you look at it, then revise it. It's much easier than trying to get like a good essay first try. So just give yourself time to do a ton of drafts and like force yourself to get even like the really rough drafts out.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would, sorry, go ahead.
No, you got it. It's okay.
Okay. I would definitely say you should start writing your Common App essay right about now if you're a rising senior. I did not, because I had a summer camp and I thought I would have time over the summer camp and I did not. So I didn't start anything until right around the time school started. And I definitely, like, there were definitely consequences to those actions. So I would say for your Common App essay, to get that out of the way is definitely a really big relief. And also another way I held myself accountable is I gave my essays to people to read. So that included my parents, my brother, and also I knew a few people through my summer camp that were attending good colleges that I was interested in applying to. And I also asked them to read over a few of my essays. And then when you ask people to read over your essays, that gives you pressure to write your own essay. Like, you can't give them an essay that's not written or an essay you didn't write. So by, I guess, like, I spaced it out effectively so that I would have to have written out a nice, good essay to give to them. And then they would give me back an essay that was edited. And then I would like maybe go through their edits, change based on feedback. And then I would have somebody else to give it to. And then because I have another person to read over that essay, that gave me the like pressure that I needed to edit through my essay or to write through that draft.
Yeah. So my advice would be just being brutally honest. If you think that you're not good at this time management stuff, or you're like prone to procrastinating, I would save most of your schools for regular decision, so you can at least do well on the essays instead of rushing it and just like taking the best you have. Instead, you can like extend it a couple months and really perfect those essays, because I think the difference between early action and regular decision isn't that much. So I think it would be a good idea if you're prone to waiting until the last minute to do things.
All right, we're talking a lot about essays now. So I'd love to take on a few questions at once and just think about lessons learned from the personal statement, the Common App essay. So we have a question here. What do colleges look at the most in your essay? We have, how do you narrow down what to write about in your Common App essay, et cetera, et cetera. So any lessons learned from this whole brainstorming, drafting, perfecting process?
Yeah, I can start again. So what I did, I just found like what they said before. I just found like 3 or 4, topics that I really resonated with, like passions that I've had throughout high school. And for each one, I just started writing words down, not even, bullet points. I just started writing words like, I enjoyed this, or, just like some keywords. And then using those words, I started building ideas off that. And I thought that was like really helpful, just like expanding my ideas and you know, eventually formulating like sentences and paragraphs and things like that.
Yeah, I did something similar to Anton. I would actually, one of my history teachers introduced me to this, but it's just like set a timer for 10 minutes and then you just have to like just start typing or writing and you can't stop until the 10 minutes are over. So once you have a general idea, you just like, it's basically a mind dump and you'll see where you end up and that way you can reflect because it is a lot harder to like push yourself to get started than to just start doing something and then you keep doing that for a little bit longer and then that 10 minutes eventually becomes like a longer time. In terms of the Common App essay, I think I wrote 3 drafts of 3 different topics. And then I had my AP Lang teacher look over them. And then she helped me pick which one we could like work with the most. And I think that's ultimately the one I actually chose. So I don't know if that's an assignment for others at their schools, but it definitely was for me and it was really helpful.
Yeah, I'll just add one quick thing. What Brian said about asking his teachers, I would strongly recommend asking your English teacher. That's like a big help because I asked my English teacher and she was really helpful. She gave me a lot of, you know, good advice. So yeah.
All right. And this question has been at the top for a little bit, so we'll just take a stab at it right now. It asks, would you suggest finding essay editors to edit the essay? And would you recommend any? Let's not do any, I guess, advertisement right now, but it is a good question of who do you go to for advice on editing essays? Is it like teachers? Is it professionals? Is it family members?
I would say that the paid editing things, while they like sound super smart and like fantastic, they're not really that personal to me. At least that's what I felt when I like tried it out. And so I felt like just sticking to people I know well, like my parents, my friends, my sister, and just like having them edit my essays instead of these corporate like services just really helped me a lot more because they would be really frank with me and just be like, this part's garbage, do that over again. And while like the paid services like would tell you like edits, most of them were just like small like grammar mistakes that I like forgot to like autocorrect. But that's just my like experience with it. I haven't found that good of like an editor yet.
I guess to answer the first part of this question, would you suggest finding someone to look at your essays? The answer is absolutely yes. You have to find someone you trust to read your essay for you, because it's likely that there's something that you missed that's going to make you sound really bad on your application. And maybe it's probably something that you don't mean, but it's going to be there and people can catch that for you. Now, who that is really depends on who you are. Some people are going to go to their parents. And I think if you're going to work with your parents, like I did, there's got to be a certain level of trust between you and your parents. And that goes both ways. And I feel like that's also something that I kind of struggled with trusting my parents. And I think you do have to set expectations beforehand, and yeah, build that trust between the two of you. Other great resources that I ended up using myself, our school counselor, or our school counselors, they pointed us to people who could read our essays. So my counselor personally, she had an intern, and she had that intern read my essay and give some feedback on that. And so, yeah, there are plenty of places to look. English teachers, obviously great too. But yeah, just make sure someone reads your essay.
Building off of what Yichen said, with your parents, I know a lot of times, especially if your parents are immigrants, their English, like writing the actual words is perhaps a little bit difficult. So having them edit grammar or how something sounds is probably not the most ideal thing. But with my parents, what I asked them to do, which was really helpful, was asking them really around like three things. One, like, does this show what I want to show about me? Like, does this, when you finish reading my essay, the lessons that you learn about myself and what this essay portrays about me, was that accurate? And was that, I guess, a good portrayal of me? And secondly, also for supplemental essays, especially, I asked my mom, like, does this answer the prompt, the actual question that is asking? Because your parents will be able to tell that. And then third, sometimes when I wrote essays, I wrote out kind of at the end some main points I was trying to portray with my essay. Like, for example, I was trying to portray that I was creative with this essay. And then I'll ask my mom afterwards, like, did you get that from this essay? Did you get that I was creative? And even though my mom won't be able to edit the grammar super perfectly, she'll be able to know whether or not this essay showed those qualities about myself. And then one quick last thing, I'm not sure if everyone will be able to have access to these kind of resources, but if you're able to get somebody from the school that you're applying to, like a current freshman there, to read over your essays, that's one of the most helpful things for me over my college application period. And again, what I usually asked those people was not to go over grammar, but do you think my essay portrays a student who would be admitted at this college, was usually the question that I was trying to answer.
All right, awesome. Yeah, that's really great advice from all of you. So as you guys can tell, the essay process is a very personal one, and often we're sharing lots of vulnerable subjects in these essays. So my next question, I'm wondering if any of you guys had trouble balancing being vulnerable and being personal versus coming across as maybe superficial and like trauma dumping in any sense.
I can try to take a stab at this. I think for me that like being vulnerable, or I guess kind of authentic, didn't necessarily mean sacrificing other aspects. Like I think depending on like who you are, you can like write yourself in a way that's like kind of funny or something, or just like showcase other aspects of your personality in a way that makes the admissions officer think that you're a very real person, very human, and like someone they would who's like super nuanced, who they would like to get to know without like talking about something sad necessarily. Like my Common App personal essay was pretty lighthearted, I think, but the people I talked to said that it was like a pretty good reflection of my personality. So I don't think it needs to be like a huge challenge you overcame. It can just be something like small that showcases who you are.
Okay, awesome. I'll take this next question. It's near the top. I'm an incoming high school freshman, so just came out of 8th grade, if I'm not wrong. What classes should I take in high school to better prepare for my college application? So panelists, you guys can reflect on, when should you start thinking about college?
When I was an upcoming high school freshman, my mom had like a whole spreadsheet laid out for like the class courses I could do and like the AP courses I could lay out to get the higher GPA in. I don't necessarily agree with that, but what I would say in like taking your classes is probably don't take standard courses if you care about the subjects you're trying to learn. I took standard gym. It was required, but it was not a fun experience because most of the people don't really care about the subject if they're in standard. But on just like taking a mixture of honors and APs of what kind of courses you like or don't like I had to take a bunch of AP English ones, but I was okay with it because I did eventually learn a lot about essay writing and persuasion topics from those like courses. So yeah, my general consensus is just don't take standard just don't take standard in general.
Yeah, going off what Raymond said, I know like everybody hears like people say like, oh, take the classes you want to take, like what interests you. And that's not necessarily the best approach. Like obviously you want to do that to make, you know, your high school experience more like fun, but at the same time, you really think like is it going to sacrifice your true goal of like maybe getting into a top school? So I would think about like which classes like maybe will bring your GPA down or things like that. Even if they really interest you, you might need to sacrifice some of those classes. And I would also recommend taking some higher level English classes because those definitely helped like fine tune my writing skills, which, you know, eventually helped me write like decently good essays. So yeah.
I feel like the classes that are good at different schools really depends on the school. Even for like standardized classes like APs, which are supposed to be the same across like the entire nation, I think it varies a lot depending on like if your school has a really hard calculus teacher or something. So I would really recommend talking to the people in the grades above, because while I think like genuine interest should be a partial factor in determining like how much you would benefit from a class, I think another big part is like if the teacher is someone you would enjoy learning from. Because for me, I would rather take an English class with a teacher who I find really fascinating rather than a math class with a teacher who's like more lackluster.
I would also say that, especially when you're going through high school, that being in classes with your friends is also really important. So you should not really try to take classes that you don't know anyone at all in, which it's definitely good to make friends, and you can also make friends through your classes. But a lot of times having friends in especially AP classes that you're taking allows for people to help you when you're studying on stuff, or people to answer questions for you when you're maybe doing a hard physics problem. And that's really helpful, especially if you're taking a lot of AP classes or hard classes all at once.
All right, so we're talking a little bit about AP classes. So this next question is, which courses are more important, APs or classes relevant for future career path interests? And specifically, if someone wants to just like briefly explain APs, honors, standards for someone who might not know. But with this question, maybe think about like what is more important, something that like boosts your GPA or something that is that shows that you're genuinely interested in a specific area.
I can try this. So at a school, like a public school, in the Wake County system, regular classes are a weighted. So there's a thing called a weighted GPA, which is what colleges care about, and that takes into account how hard a class is in addition to what grade you got. So there's standard classes, which are weighted at 4.0, honors classes, which are weighted at 4.5, and then AP classes or dual enrollment classes, which are weighted at 5.0. So I think solely from a college app perspective, the general strategy that people tend to take is taking a lot of AP classes rather than prioritizing classes in their major, because I think like if you have a specific major like physics, there's only so many classes that you can take in physics anyways. Maybe there's like 3 at your school at max. So I think people just end up tending to take a lot of classes all over. And I think class rank is definitely a factor, like because college acceptance rates are so incredibly low. Like if your class rank isn't quite in like the top 20% or something, it'll like be kind of a blow to your application. So I think if you can handle taking AP classes and feel like confident in your ability to do well in them, and like the teacher is good, you have friends, etc., like was mentioned earlier, I think it would be generally good to take AP classes.
Yeah, kind of on the same line. I think one thing just to keep in mind is that you kind of want to pick classes that you think you will like do somewhat well in, or at least maybe that'll like coincide with classes you enjoy. But even if like, let's say you take so many APs, but you don't do well in them, then that's not going to boost your GPA if that's your goal. So I think that's also something to keep in mind, is less about like what GPA rank, or like is it honors or APs, but more so like, are you going to do well in the class and like what you will get out of the class.
So I think I agree with what's been said before, but I think the biggest theme the biggest thing that colleges are looking for is the passion. right? They want to look for people who are going to change the world, especially if you're looking at the top schools. And so I don't think AP versus like relevant for future career path necessarily conflicts a lot of the time. If you want to go into sciences, for example, just take all the AP science classes. And if you're aiming for top schools, it's good to challenge yourself. I mean, it's good to challenge yourself anyway, but especially if you're aiming for top schools, it's good to challenge yourself and be curious. A lot of the time, AP is going to provide the best path for that. And so I think it's important to, yes, follow your passions, and also to put yourself out there academically, and challenge yourself by taking AP classes.
All right. So I want to zoom out just a little bit. We've been talking a little bit about GPA, class rank, and in my experience, those get you kind of like a foot in the door for a lot of these Ivy League top schools that we've been talking about. But with these top schools, it might be a little prescriptive to think that's the goal for everyone, right? So my next question is one of these questions. It's talking about, how do you know what school is right for you and what fits your interests, your passions, etc., these things we've been talking about. So panelists, feel free to share kind of like why you're going to your school, or like how you chose or curated your school list, things like that.
I'll start off. I think that like academics is a big part of it. You know, like what you want to pursue is like a major part of why you should choose a certain college. But you should also zoom out and look at, you know, some of the other factors you may not think of, such as like, you know, the weather there, the size of the school, what the campus life is like, because those things, once you're in college, they're gonna affect like your academics too, you know. So I would just go on a lot of websites, just search up like the different aspects of the schools you're interested in and compile a list that way.
I think talking to current students or like alumni of schools that you're looking at is really, really good, because they can give you a more honest opinion about like the school culture, or like things you're curious about, like living conditions, or like how hard the school is, or anything like that. Almost to like, they'll probably give you a more honest answer than like an admissions officer or like someone who's like supposed to be promoting the school. So I think that was really helpful for me in terms of like learning about schools and also choosing the one that I ended up choosing.
Yeah, just to quickly add on to that, a lot of the schools that I got into had like visit days where you could go, and like specific like sessions were set up for like you to learn more about the school and for you to get to interact with the people who attend that school. So I think those are really good to get a sense of the school, maybe like not completely, because their whole goal is for you to enjoy the visit days, but like you can like listen around and have conversations like Abigail said. And I think those for me shaped my perceptions of the schools the most.
Just one quick tidbit to add, as someone who didn't have a lot of time to go visit schools myself, I found that one quick and easy way to find out about a school and how well you and the school fit together is to look at their application essays, because that actually tells you a lot about what they want from you and what you might want to get from them. And so seeing those prompts can be a good way to, for example, eliminate some schools off of your list. And then for the ones that you don't just immediately eliminate, right, you can read the prompts, start working on the essays, and that'll force you to bring or to do some more research about the school itself, especially with a lot of those supplementals. And with that, you can cut down your list or add to your list. For example, if you find schools with essay prompts that you find are easier to write, not necessarily because, you know, they're just inherently easy and you're like whatever, but because you have a good answer to those essay prompts. So that's one quick and easy way to also gauge a school.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what's been said. Campus life is more important than it might seem. But yeah, I want to pivot a little bit to writing supplemental essays, and more specifically, the why school essays. So for example, why Duke, why UNC, those types of essays. And if you're not familiar with them, you will be when you get into the midst of things. So we've kind of established finding a school that fits your interests, your passions, but how do you show to the school that you're right for them?
I think when writing a why school essay, probably the most basic and most important thing is to name drop, or I guess reference specific things about that school. So for example, specific programs they have, maybe specific teacher, or like professors even, or specific projects or community service groups or student groups, anything really specific about this group or this school that you can't find on just a very basic Google search. So that shows to the school that you're actually interested in it because you've done a lot of research, and also that you have specific goals on how you're going to further your education at that school. So look for very specific components of the school to reference in your essay.
Yeah, I'll just go a little bit off what Angela was saying. I would sit down and really like just research the school, like just browse their websites for like maybe an hour or so, like click on all the links, see what they offer. Cause I think that's the best way. Just like it'll help you like know what you want to write about too. It'll give you a lot of ideas.
I think in addition to that, you should treat a YS essay as like kind of like a relationship. So what can the school give to you, and then also how you can contribute to that part of the school. So I think if you can tie in a lot of those things that you put on your extracurriculars and tie how your history with those groups can influence and push you to do some new things at the school that you're applying to, that'll really strengthen your application and adds to you as a person contributing to not just academics, but now also that campus life. And I think that you should treat basically every supplemental essay as a YS essay, even if it doesn't specifically say YS, because that question could be asked by any college, but that college chose to ask it for you and them.
Anyone else have any thoughts about this question? All right. Yeah, so it's actually interesting. I got back what my admission officers commented about me, and I got back those scores, and they did comment that they liked that I had specifics. They said I was very specific there. But anyways, so the next question here, I was looking for it earlier, but it's a question about character limit and how do you fit everything you want to say into 250 words, 300 words? How do you fit it into the activity list? What are some tips, tricks, advice you guys have for managing that character limit?
For me, I didn't find any fast solutions. I just sat there and like deleted words and like played around with using smaller words. But for the class of 2024 and beyond, like maybe something you could do is put it into ChatGPT and be like, with minimal editing, could you please shorten this to 150 characters?
Yeah, so I would genuinely say like you shouldn't worry about meeting the limit. Most of the times you're gonna go over the limit, and it's all about cutting it down after that. So I would just write, everything you want to say that's in your head, and then slowly you can start picking out, maybe some like redundant parts or things like that.
For me, for writing the activities and the awards, the thing I utilized the most were abbreviations. So if you can abbreviate a really long word into something that still someone would be able to recognize, definitely go for it. So for example, competition, you could shorten that into just comp, C-O-M-P. And using abbreviations like that really helped me cut down on characters. And also acronyms for really long awards. You can just put the acronym in there, and then you can expand on what the acronym actually means in your additional information section. And I actually emailed an admissions officer to ask about that. And if you write an acronym in your awards or your activities and your admissions officer doesn't know what it is, they will check your additional information section to see if you have it written out. So that's a really good way to shorten down if you have like a really long award or really long competition.
And Angela, just to confirm, would you recommend that for essays or just the activity list and awards?
I would recommend that just for activities and awards. In your essay, typically they would expect you to have room to write stuff out.
Perfect. All right, so Lita, I think you opened a can of worms there with the whole ChatGPT thing. So that is very relevant right now with generative AI, and there are a number of questions about, am I allowed to use ChatGPT? Should I use ChatGPT? So I know you guys aren't tech ethics, but how helpful would you say ChatGPT in your experience would be to write something as personal as a college essay?
I can start off. I remember during my like typing times of college essays, ChatGPT didn't exist yet, so I'm not quite sure about like the college thing, but there are a lot of like AI like detectors as well if you actually want to use ChatGPT. So I'd say like probably don't, because if the admissions officers look at that and then just see, oh no, a paragraph is just all AI generated, that's a big red flag, and that's probably a guaranteed rejection from that college. I just say to stick to what like you're feeling, like what you are, what you want to write out, not the machine.
I have a slightly different opinion. I think while you shouldn't use ChatGPT to generate things, I think that's like really easy to tell because the way ChatGPT writes feels like very neutral to me, at least the current 3.5 version that we have access to. I feel like it can be used to like brainstorm ideas maybe, or like just help you find like better synonyms. Like I think sometimes the sentence doesn't flow the way that you want it to flow, and you can ask like ChatGPT to generate like alternatives. So I think light edits in that form can be helpful. Like I applied to a summer program this summer, and I thought ChatGPT was good for writing essays with that and like fixing grammar issues.
I'll give like half of my 2 cents here. So when you're writing your essay, you're trying to showcase who you are. ChatGPT is not human. Their writing is not human. But yes, brainstorming and editing might have some purpose there. So on the topic of cheating, really quickly, I have this question here. Is it cheating if you copy and paste your application essay to multiple schools?
No, please do that. It'll help you a lot. You'll really suffer if you don't.
Okay, perfect. I think that's all we need there. Definitely use that. So I really love this question at the top here. Looking back, what are the things you feel your parents did right and what they didn't? So broadly, I guess you guys can think about the college application process in general. Maybe think about like boundaries, how much input should they have?
One thing that I'd say my parents did right is to encourage me to start doing my college applications really early. Like I did it, like I started asking teacher recommendations in like the spring before like of my junior year, as well as like doing my college like personal essay like just at the beginning of summer. But something I don't really agree with is applying to so many schools. One, it's like if you spread out your resources too thin, you're not really going to get accepted into any college like that. And also, like, do you really want to go to like those 17 colleges you applied for that you have like zero research into besides, oh, it's an Ivy, or oh, it's a good school? I'd argue you probably don't want to do that.
So one of the MIT essay prompts was describe your background, or basically tell us where you come from. And one of those things that could have been was your parents. And what I wrote about was how my parents encouraged me to explore what I was passionate about. I think that's really important for any parent to do, to encourage your children to explore and also to support them in that. And I think that really helps with building someone who can be successful later on in life, because they are passionate about something and they will do what they need to do to get to where they need to get with regards to that.
Yeah, building off of Yi-Chen, I think a lot of times there's like extracurriculars that a lot of parents they think are more prestigious than others, like maybe math competitions or science bowl or stuff like that. And if your child is really passionate about those activities, that's really wonderful, and you should have them do that. But otherwise, it's really, I don't think, a good idea to push or force your kids into doing these extracurriculars. So what I really like that my mom did and my parents did was that they never really forced me to do a lot of extracurriculars that I wasn't passionate in. So I really enjoyed public speaking and speech and debate. So those are the things that my parents supported me in doing. And overall, I think my relationship with my parents is really good. I have a really close relationship with my mom, and I think that actually really helped my college application process because she was pretty involved because I wanted her to look over my application essays and my things. So I think having a good relationship with your parents, and also as a parent trying to maintain a really good relationship with your child, is really important. Like, don't sacrifice your relationship with your child to have them go into a math competition or something, because things like that are really important in the long run for college applications and also just in the future.
Yeah, going a little in the opposite direction, I think one thing I appreciated my parents doing was pushing myself to do some of these activities. Obviously, they emphasize, if you don't like it, you don't have to do it. You can always drop out. But I think just like throwing these options like in my head, making me try new things, I think that definitely made me find some stuff that I love. Like when I was, in elementary school, my mom was like, "Oh, after school, can you just like attend this band interest meeting or whatever?" And that's when I instantly fell in love with it, and I've been doing it since, and I'll probably keep doing it in college. So I think, yeah, that's one thing that they did a good job.
Interesting, Yi-Chen. I think I wrote about a similar thing in my Duke supplemental essay. But on the topic of math competitions, I think we have a question here. Is it necessary to participate in contests like AMC 10 or 12 and USACO when applying for an engineering major? So if that doesn't apply to you, you can think broadly about, is it necessary to have these prestigious national awards to do well in the college application process?
I guess as kind of an answer, I don't think anything is necessary. Everything is optional but encouraged. The only thing that guarantees you an acceptance is if you donate a lot of money. So like everything else, it's like it helps to some degree, but you can never really be sure how much. I think there are certain schools that really value contests like the AMC and USACO because they're like a pretty objective and like high difficulty thing that they can like look at and use to like evaluate how dedicated you are. And as someone who like participated in them and really enjoyed it, I would recommend doing it if it's something you're interested in. But there's a lot of other ways to show interest too, like research, just being really passionate in class and having a good letter of recommendation, and just so many other ways.
All right, if no one else has any thoughts about that, I'd like to zoom out again a little bit. So we've been talking a lot about, say, like extracurriculars and how to kind of show interest in these passions. But there is a bigger question of, what do I do if I'm undecided, if I have no idea what I'm actually like specifically interested in? So this question here is, how did you decide your major or interest for college? If you've not decided your major, would that be a negative factor? I think there's another question about how to apply undecided. I'll look at that later. But yeah, how did you choose your major? And if you had trouble finding one specific major, how did you kind of bridge your interests together?
I think I'm very much in terms of like high school, I very much didn't know what I wanted to do, and I still don't really know what I want to do. But for me, what I did was throughout high school, I basically tried out a lot of different things. I basically like tried out a lot of extracurriculars, different classes, just to see if I could find something I liked. And then I ended up finding like some areas that I broadly liked. And then within that, there's a lot of like interdisciplinary fields that you can kind of use to combine your various interests. It's really good for like if you're trying to like frame your application around something, you can look at those type of fields or those type of areas that can really help just like kind of narrow down, or at least make it seem like you kind of know what you want, but even if you're still exploring, you kind of have at least like a general vicinity that you're looking at.
Well, another piece of advice I would give is, you could think about leaning towards your academic strengths that you had in college, because that may be something that you would be more successful in college. Like, by all means, like if you have other interests, like you should pursue those. But I think that's like a good first step in, maybe brainstorming some things you want to do in college.
I'll ask a follow-up question for this question. What advice would you guys have for someone who has interests, but they're in completely different areas? For example, actually, I think I'm a pretty good example, like public policy, computer science. How do you bridge those seamlessly gaps?
I guess I'll answer this question. So I did a few extracurriculars that were kind of scattered. So some of them were the humanities, like public speaking, and then I had STEM ones, which I did some math in like middle school, and then I did research was my big STEM activity. So the way I bridged them, which was a big factor of like how I wrote and structured my Common App application actually, was I found one common thread throughout all of them. And this was some very kind of broad general thing that you could find in a lot of extracurriculars, but the one that I found was storytelling. And that was the big general theme that I based my application around, was that I really like to tell stories, and I was able to incorporate that into all the extracurriculars that I did. So like telling stories with speech and debate, telling stories through my research for environmental science. So I think a good way to do that, or the way I did it, was I used my Common App essay as kind of the bridge between everything, like finding one characteristic about myself that I think I'm passionate about and is reflective in all of the extracurriculars or the activities that I do, and then using that to tie them all together to show like I do all of these things, but at my core, there's one thing I'm really good at that you can see in all of my extracurriculars.
Yeah, I think my answer is similar in that I think you can actually find some similarities between a lot of activities that even if you think they're super unrelated, there's almost always a way you can find a similarity. I think for me, I'm very much a STEM person, but I did a lot of speech and debate as well as like more like service-based advocacy events in high school. But the way I kind of connected it was mainly through speech and debate, whereas like, for example, like in STEM research, you're still using like public speaking, you're still using like presentation and stuff like that. There's always skills that like kind of aren't confined to any single discipline. And so there's almost always a way you can find to like connect your different activities into like some way to make it like more cohesive.
Anyone have any other thoughts before we move on? All right, so on the topic of storytelling, college applications is kind of like telling your story and your story. So I want to take this question here. How can I improve my writing skills, and how much will essays matter compared, say, your GPA? So to me, I think I was in the same boat. I was kind of worried that like I wasn't a good writer and that my essays wouldn't be good enough. So I guess what advice would you guys have for someone who might be feeling this way and just generally stressing about how they can tell their story?
So first, the easier question to answer out of those two is how much will essays matter compared to your GPA? At some schools, your GPA will get you in. But looking at some of the top schools, which some of you may be interested in, the GPA is a cutoff that you meet, and that's the cutoff for them to start reading your essays. And then the essays and everything else about your application is what gets you in, as far as I understand. Writing skills. How do you improve your writing skills? I think I should preface this by saying that there are a lot of really like beautifully written college essays online, and that your essay does not have to be like that. You can write a very matter-of-fact essay that tells the admissions office who you are, and why they should admit you. A lot of that is probably in your supplemental essays. In those, you can be very much just completely straightforward. I want to go to this school because this school has this certain club, that I want to do, and this will provide certain opportunities for me, like I think Angela said earlier. As for your Common App essay, you can also be pretty straightforward with that, but you do have to tell a cohesive story. So I think it's really important to be able to write in a manner that conveys clearly what you are trying to tell them. And you don't want to, you don't really want to say in your essay, I'm a really good student, or there's a saying that goes around, show, not tell. And with that, you're basically trying to use the experiences that you have. And this could be stuff like what's on your extracurricular sheet on your Common App, or your awards list, or whatever, right? You can tie the other stuff into your essays and use that to explain where those things came from and what those say about you, what they say about your personality. For example, my running essay, it was very much a straightforward essay. I just wrote about my experiences, but through that, I try to convey how, I spent a lot of time and energy on that, and I was really passionate about it because I was running home from school, for example. That's just one example of how you can write well for a college essay, and that's how you can write well for pretty much anything, as long as you're able to get your message across effectively. You don't have to write poetry to get into college.
Yeah, I definitely agree with each. I think definitely taking a small moment in your life and kind of extrapolating from that on how it's affected you and how it represents you as a person today. And also remembering that the goal of essays is for admissions officers to take like you on a piece of paper and kind of put it in 3D and actually think of you as a person. That's like the most important part, and that's why you should write from your point of view and do it in a way that sounds like you. And also, I think remembering that these admissions officers might be reading like tens of thousands of essays, so they're not going to spend a lot of time on yours, at least at first. So you have to get their attention and do it in a way that they don't have to like spend hours thinking about all the metaphors and figurative language that you've used. So be direct, but also be yourself.
And some other piece of advice I would give is, especially if you're a rising senior, a lot of things like GPA, awards, they're really hard to add or change. So when you're applying for the college application process, especially when it hits fall of senior year and you're in the midst of applying, a lot of those hard statistics or even your extracurriculars and your awards, you really can't change stuff about them anymore. So the really only thing that you can change and you have the power to make as good as you can is your essays. Like your awards and your activities can't be changed anymore, can't be added much anymore before you're able to apply to college. So I think when you reach that stage, then a lot of the focus you should have is on the essays. Also, I think you can also look at kind of the vibe of every school. So sometimes certain schools are known for not really caring as much about their essay processes. So I think a good example is I think a lot of times MIT is known for focusing more on like standardized scores or GPA or like hard award stats beyond like subjective things like the essay. So for example, for like my MIT essays, I didn't put as much time into them, and that still kind of worked out. So I think like kind of knowing the vibe of the school also helps.
Going off what Angela said, you can, at least this is what I did, but you can find a common data set for all the universities. They're required to like fill out this form that gives all their information. And on there, you can find, their preferences for, scores, test GPA, essays, like they'll list it as like if it's important or not important and things like that. And it's different for every school. So it's definitely something you can check out.
All right. So we're nearing 9 a little bit. So I'm going to take this last question and then we'll do like kind of a speed fire round. But I've seen this come up a little bit. Did you take any language classes? If so, which ones? I don't know what happened to language classes, but if anyone wants to take a stab at this.
Yeah, I took French 1 to 4 and AP like throughout middle school and high school. And like, although it didn't really do much to my application, I'm still like a below average French speaker. I do think it like did help me get some connections and like people to talk to, if anything, for essays. And I think that was the most important part of me learning a language course in regards to colleges. It doesn't have to like directly impact your application. And also language classes, like unless you're like really like passionate about like being like a translator or like just like traveling the world, languages don't exactly affect your college application that much, I believe.
Yeah, I also took French all 4 years of high school, and I mean, I read about it a little bit because I love baking, so I talked about like how I love baking French cuisine specifically. But I mean, I'm probably gonna pursue like I'm gonna continue French probably in college and like maybe minor in it just because I like it, but I don't like it wasn't a huge part of my application.
I actually took French and Chinese. I don't think either of them had that big of an impact on my application. And I don't really think either of them are really gonna impact too much what I pursue in college, but I enjoyed the classes. So I'd say if you enjoy language, I mean, go for it, but I don't think it's like, you don't have to think that hard about it in terms of like whether or not you should take it.
Yep, I agree there. Lots of French speakers here, or maybe not speakers, but people who took French class. And I think in some cases, language might be required. I might need to check on that. But okay, let's do a Spitfire round and then we'll try to wrap up. So maybe 1 to 2 people per question. Where did you get your research experience?
My research experience was fully through my school. I didn't have like any outside stuff. I just applied through my school and then I did it through my school.
Also, by yourself, you can do research. So a lot of the regional competitions, you can just ask someone from your school to register you, and you don't need a mentor or a professor to do good research. But also, if you want to intern under a professor, the easiest way is cold emailing. It's just drafting an email and then sending it to a bunch of professors, and inevitably, usually 1 or 2 of them respond to you.
All right, what should I do over the summer?
My opinion, what have you been doing during school? Like that kind of activities, I like usually like to continue over the summer, even though it's not like actual school activities. Like swim team, I swim over the summer. First aid, oh, I volunteer like with like lifeguarding and like being a first responder, that kind of stuff. Just like continuing what you like to do in school and just extending it.
Yeah, I agree that I think colleges prefer, instead of rather than, a couple scattered, activities, I think they prefer that, you focus on one thing that you're passionate about and just like, sustain that activity for the longest time possible.
All right, and lastly, before I let you guys have your last word here, how should you ask for recs and how involved are you as the student in the rec your teacher writes? And just for clarification, recs meaning teacher recommendations.
The best teachers you should ask are the ones who can tell a story about you. And so that means you should be talking with your teachers, all of them, even the ones for the classes that you're not super into. You should be actively participating in class to get the best recommendations. As for how involved are you as a student in the rec actively, you're not supposed to see them. So don't even ask. That's like unethical.
All right. So with that, I know there's a lot more questions in here. Panelists, if you guys want to still be open to questions, maybe Owen, if you guys can facilitate that communication. But I'd like to kind of wrap up and give each of the panelists an opportunity to leave the audience with 1 piece of advice, and then I'll do some concluding remarks myself, and then I'll hand it back to Owen. And let's start in reverse order from the poster. I can give you guys like maybe a minute to think.
I think I'm ready. Sorry, it took a bit. But I think the most important thing to do in life in general is to follow your passions. You can't really fake passion, and you go the furthest when you're doing something you're passionate about.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chen, wholeheartedly. And another thing adding on to that is don't take in everything. Just like learn to say no and just do the things you want to do instead of accepting everything and having a billion things to do. It's better to just focus on things you like, even if, say, your parents don't exactly like it. Continue pursuing it. I think you'll show them that it will pay off one day.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'd also say take risks, and like if opportunities don't present themselves, take the first step in creating an opportunity for yourself.
Yeah, I agree as well. I would say my one piece of advice would just be don't afraid to open up to other people. Don't keep it in all to yourself. You need advice and outside comments and things like that.
Yeah, building off of that, I would say, especially during the college application process, your mindset is really important. So obviously don't be overly cocky and be like, I can get into any school, but don't be so hard on yourself, especially if you're applying to colleges and you already think that there's no way you're going to get into these colleges. That I feel like that definitely impacts the way that you even apply to any schools. So don't be so hard on yourself and try your best to maintain a positive attitude and a positive mindset throughout all of it.
Yeah, kind of echoing what other people have said. I think college is not supposed to be seen as like this final step that you get to. Like you're still 18 and there's the majority of your life is not going to be at this like educational institute. And even if you get admitted to like a super wonderful college, if getting to that point like makes you really burnt out and makes you feel really tired, like there's still so much more to do. And like I think that's just not a good way to set yourself up for general success.
Yeah, I think what everyone has said kind of very well sums up like what I believe as well. I guess one more thing I would add, that just because we haven't mentioned it, but one thing is that with like college application process, I just keep in mind your end like big goal isn't always just like getting to like a top college. You should also think about like scholarships and like programs and stuff. So like just don't overlook other parts such as those things. It's not always just only about like getting into maybe like the top college.
Right, awesome. And if this was in person, this is where I would kind of let you guys give the panelists a huge round of applause. Congrats, you guys, and not just for getting into your wonderful colleges, but coming through this process with more insight into yourself and what you want out of your future. So yeah, you guys can maybe hype them up in the chat or react any way you seem fit. I'll leave you guys with my 2 cents as well. And 3 pieces of advice I'd like to leave this panel. Be humble, be honest and true to yourself, and be grounded in the present. High school is not just a stepping stone for college. Enjoy it. Go to school events, have fun, and please appreciate your teachers. All right, with that, thank you guys so much. And Owen, just back to you.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you all the panelists. Really appreciate everyone sharing your experience. And thank you for the participants. And as well, thanking our organization, the CAS-NC, the Carey Chinese School, the Academy of Chinese Language and Chinese School at Chapel Hill. Thank you, everyone. Right. And the recording for the event will be available. We will share the recording in the future. Thank you.